All right, this is our first. This is our first jungle. We're gonna call it a jungle chat. Me and Adam, we're talking earlier. I think we call it chat. Um, so right now we have in the classroom have Fiery, who's a mod, and a Plat jungler, and I believe you're main in Warwick this year, right?
Mm-hmm. Warwick.
And we got Tattered, another mod, who I think is just curious. He plays a little bit of everything. He likes a Morgana jungle.
I play everything. I'm mostly here because I seem to always get shoved jungle when I can't do it.
It's a lot.
Well,
But
it's always a good time to learn.
yeah. So we have about 5 or 6 slides, and we're just going to discuss this stuff, and then we'll maybe do some chatting, and then get posted in our Facebook page. Probably watching it now. So none of us play Lee Sin, but he's your typical the jungler. Might gank secure. Um, Adam, you want to go over this?
Sure, we can. Let's just see. This is just the map of the camps that are up, right?
Yeah.
Just want to make sure I'm on the same page as you.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so pretty typical League of Legends Summoner's Rift. You've got your Krugs, Red Brambleback, and Razorbeaks on the bottom half of the map, your Wolves, Blue Sentinel, Gromp. Those are going to be your objectives, or your camps to take. Then there's the neutral objectives, which is Dragon, Baron Nashor. You'll be fighting over those in the middle. And then your enemy has the same thing, but on the opposite sides of the map. So where you have your blue Sentinel side, he's going to have red Brambleback, Razorbeaks, Krugs, and then same on the opposite quadrant. Those are going to be your primary objectives to invade for and take away from your opponent.
And this map doesn't show it, but you have scuttles right here that provide vision. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Lane, you're new to this. What's your Adam? What's your favorite camp non-buff? Do you have a favorite?
Uh, Typically it's so depending on who I'm playing, but usually it's just Grump, simply because this season they've not only buffed the passive on it where it gives you the old scuttle buff. So now when you kill Gromp, you get health and mana back. But on top of that, for most champions, it's also, at least for most of the champions that I play, it's one of the easiest camps to take as compared to multi-target camps because most of my champions have a hard time with that.
Yeah. So good point. It's also my favorite. Um, AOE. Some champions have AOE, area of attack. That's when you get the chickens. You can kill those quicker. Wolves. If you have a single target champion, you tend to favor your buffs and your Grump. And Grump is actually my favorite to take from someone else as well, just because it's my favorite to have, favorite to take. Right here we got some just jungle focus things. These are just things um, that if you learn these, let's just say you're Iron, Bronzy, or you're another lane thinking about jungling, or as in Tattered's case, you're getting shoved into, you got a 5 man and they're like, okay, you get the jungle. These are things that are just really rudimentary. That if you could learn and kind of work on as you go, you'll definitely improve. Um, Track jungler. These are in no particular order; they're just listed. Um, so it's good to know where the jungler starts. That helps you know potentially where they're going to path. And this is even as a laners. I feel like if laners learned a little bit more about jungle, they could actually be better in lane. So if you know a jungler starts bot and he's pathing towards top, and you're a top laner, probably going to see him potentially around the 3 minute. It just depends on his clear if he goes to scuttle first or whatnot. Um, so the start helps tabbing and seeing how much CS. There's a lot of people. I even did a jungle um, coaching session with someone, and he didn't even know that every camp gives four. I don't know how he hadn't figured that out yet, but so every camp gives you yes. You see a jungler come out in a gank top, and he's got 12 CS and both buffs. He took a buff, and depending on his level, Grump. Um, it's good to watch that tab and see what kind of CS they have, what their levels are and their items. And Adam, feel free to jump in anytime you have something that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you're talking about is super important. Those are good things to remember. That is a little looking into tabbing and seeing how much CS you're at, how much CS the enemy jungler is at, and stuff like that is a little bit of a high level technique. Just because uh, I know tracking the enemy jungler is something that most coaches will get into when you get to gold plus. The reason
Yeah.
being is a lot of the time in bronze silver, it's a lot about just focus on yourself, focus on staying in the game and what you can do to help your teammates get through the game. Once you've gotten that down, then you start looking into the enemy side of the game, how to set your enemies behind, and so on and so forth. But super good point that you bring up, Zeke, that each camp does give you 4. Um, and that is a very good way to kind of check where the enemy jungler has been or have an idea. Because if you see them gank topside and they have double buffs and they only have 8 CS, that's your basic pointer that tells you they've only taken their 2 camps. So whatever side of the map they're on, the other side of the map is also going to have 2 camps that are free for the taking.
Yeah. And I mean, that's like next level laner stuff too. Yeah, tabbing. I would say tabbing is probably a little bit more intermediate kind of thing to start working on. But I think even if you're starting, even start with that kind of thought pattern, like that I want to worry about him at some. Because even a laner could capitalize on information, right? You can capitalize on like deep warding and potentially getting that gromp for. I mean, just depending on lane states. Um, Number 2, focus winning lanes. This is something, okay, so especially in the lower elos where I'm at. I mean, most people consider like platinum below, but we're talking like bronze and irons. If you're trying to get out of that, you're gonna have so many teammates that aren't worth your time. So focus the ones that are winning, that show that they can win. They have a bunch of games on the champion, or they're an early champion. Uh, you want to focus on what's going to help you win, and not try to just keep dying with a bot lane that's just hinting off their face. Gank often, repeat. This is just more of like thinking about it being an aggressive. We're going to more of aggressive meta. They're trying to push away from just farm meta, and also utilize ult impact. Just the way I think about it. Adam, you may agree or disagree, but if my ult's up, I want to do something with it. Like I feel like if, as a jungler, if you're just your ult for like 5-6 minutes, not in a lane, it's kind of wasting it.
Hmm I would agree there. That doesn't necessarily go for just the jungler. I would say for anyone. Most ultimates have a cooldown. I think the maximum ultimate on a cooldown is 3 minutes. I think that's Shen ultimate at the beginning of the game. But almost every champion has your ultimate every 2 to 3 minutes or so. You probably, like almost always, other than very specific scenarios, want to be using your ultimate every few minutes or so. Not necessarily as soon as it comes up, because I know some people are going to get that misconception where they're like, oh, I have ultimate, I need to go gank now.
Yeah.
Because then you start becoming predictable. But there are actually the main point that I would say that you want to take away from like that idea of utilize ult to impact is don't be hesitant to drop your ultimate. Because I know a lot of people, especially in lower elo, where like when I say lower elo, I mean bronze iron, where they won't drop their ultimate because they're like, what if I need it 30 seconds from now? Or what if I need it this like in this much time? Don't worry about what's going to happen 30, 45 seconds from now, because if you have a good use of your ultimate right now, take that usage, because that may not ever come.
Yeah, true. And I think a lot of times in the lower elos too, um, people feel like if I gank and I don't kill, or I ult and I don't kill, it's a waste. But you got to think about this in an aspect of, did I get a flash? Did I make that laner feel unsafe? Is he going to try to push my laner in now? Like, there's so much psychological stuff to it. So just because you didn't kill someone, it doesn't mean it wasn't a successful gank or a successful utilization of your. You gotta think about it. I think a lot of times people think about it. If, oh, I didn't get a kill. That was bad. Track lane state. This is, I would say, is a little bit more intermediate too, but it'll definitely help you as you're jungling, looking at the different lanes and seeing, okay, my mid is at mid, my top is pushed all the way to the tower, and my bot lane is pushing on the tower. Knowing where they're at and kind of health mana, those are kind of just like next levels on top of that. Like if you could just start somewhere, it's just positioning. Because as a jungler, who do you like to gank? You like to gank the person that top guy is shoving in top tower because he has a whole lane to run back. So if you're gonna think about what I can do in the map, like counter ganking different things, it's good to know the positioning for what you can. If your laner's gonna push in, you can help. If your teammates are pushing in a lane, you can think, well, that looks juicy. If I was the other jungler, so maybe meet him there. Like maybe you counter gank together, or you counter gank when he's ganking. Those things are kind of helpful. I would say if you're probably low elo, the health mana items levels, different things are going to be a little bit higher. But if you could just look at positioning of the lane states, as in who on my team I can help, and who on my team is cruising per se, like who's about to get ganked or could get ganked.
Yeah, I can agree with that. The biggest thing, or I think, kind of to summarize that whole point is just when you're in the jungle, especially when you're farming your camps, you aren't at any imminent threat of dying. And if someone shows up, they'll show up on your mini map, so you don't have to be too worried about that. What you want to be doing when you're taking your camps is you want to pretty often, as much as you possibly can, without screwing up your jungle clear, you want to be looking at each lane. That's the biggest thing, because information is everything to a jungler. Information is going to be your everything. And just knowing who just knowing who is at what, like who is close to tower, who is close to their own tower, who is at risk of dying, who's low, just all of that information is going to be super useful. So just remember that not doing something that's super mechanically heavy, such as farming your camps or just walking through your jungle pathing to your next camp, you should typically be looking at the rest of your lanes just to gather information, because information is going to be your best friend.
Yeah, totally agree. And another thing I think as a jungler, this is just my personal opinion. Like everyone should be looking at their mini map quite frequently. But as a jungler, I like take pride in letting my teammates know that someone just walked over a wall, someone's here or there. Like I feel like I should be like the little the watchtower because I'm constantly looking at the map, so I can feed that information on. Jungle timers. So these are really important. So this kind of goes in a thing. I don't want to get too deep into this because the plan is in future jungle chats we'll get into like a little bit more just on a certain topic and dig a little bit deeper. But these are good to know because of sequencing. And if that word doesn't mean a lot to you, then probably should Google some like jungle beginner videos. But it helps with your sequencing and knowing where to be on the map and where you should be so you don't waste time. Time wasted is bad as a jungle. But so your buffs come up at a minute 30, and then they respawn 5 minutes after being taken. And in the parentheses, it's just like kind of a ballpark figure. I mean, these are going to be different depending on how fast champions take these objectives. But just a 645 is a typical, like, it might be up now. If he started blue, if the enemy started blue, his blue buff might be up. So maybe I can counter gank him. Maybe I can steal it. Or if I started red, if I started my own red and I got it, then around 645, it would be up again for me. Know where to be. You got your camps, a minute 30, minute 42, somewhere around there generically. They changed this in 11.11, 15. Is it 11.11 or 11.10?
I think the jungle changes came through 11:10.
Okay, yeah, so they bumped it up from 2 minutes to 2:15, and that was kind of the force us a little bit more out of these power farming meta that we've been stuck in with Udyr and Hecarim. That's it. Can't just rinse and repeat. You're gonna have some idle time that you should be doing. Scuttle's 315 plus 230. Dragon's 5, and then plus 5 minutes after. Rift is 8, and plus 6 minutes after. Adam, jungle question.
What's
Do you,
good?
do you prefer? And feel free to go in like scenario based. What's your favorite thing to get first? A first Rift or the first Dragon?
I like how you mentioned to go into a specific scenario because that's typically the way I would answer that question, depending on your team, really. If, in my opinion, if your team is constantly shoving out lanes, they're not listening to you to stop, like to freeze lanes, or they're just pushing up for no reason whatsoever. I personally would be like, yo, I'm gonna take a Rift Herald here over the first dragon, just because that's free gold for me, and I might as well use my. It sounds bad, but I might as well use my teammates to the fullest that they're worth, because if they're just gonna shove and die anyway, or if there's a lot of times where they're playing super far up in their lane, I'd rather have this extra pressure on the map. Now, if your laners aren't pushing out super far, they're not they're typically not winning the early game. They're scaling champions, so on and so forth. Many reasons you don't want to play for the early game. Then I would typically go for first dragon, just because first dragon to me is kind of like, okay, I'm committing to the long haul. Whereas first herald to me is, all right, we're playing to accelerate the game, accelerate the pace, and we're trying to go for early mid game.
I was nodding right there. That's exactly kind of my thought pattern. Like, I guess maybe I hadn't thought about like how they're pushing and how useless they're being or not responding to pings. I don't say useless to us. But I usually I think about it in the aspect of, are we scaling or non-scaling? Um, and also I tend to favor the Rift because I feel like the the first tower and someone losing their first tower, like I feel like that's more psychologically damaging team than someone losing the dragon, because you still have to get 3 more. So I look at it more of like I think I tend to favor the Rift, but it doesn't mean like I'm gonna force it. Um, if the dragon's free and like my top lane sucks and my mid sucks, I'm not gonna force Rift, but I tend to favor the Rift.
Yeah, I would agree. I tend to favor the Rift as well.
And moves and counter moves. So this goes back into what Adam was saying, is information is key. So anytime you spot the jungler, no matter where he's at, so this goes for anyone. This goes for Tattered, like anyone that's picking up jungle just because they get shoved into it and it flex. Anytime you see the jungler, you should do something with that information. If he's top, what can you get bot? If you're top as well, can you get there in time to kill or help, or should every time he gains something, he also loses something. It's like a what are those little things? Teeter totters. His up is his down. Like there's a yin yang to
Seesaw.
it. Yeah, seesaw. So like if he's top side, he should lose something bot side. He should pay for letting you know that, and that's the way you got to think about it. Even if you're beginning or if you're trying to get more aggressive. I was telling Adam I'm trying to get more aggressive into out of the tank jungle kind of support mindset. Is he gave you something by telling you where he's at? What can you take from that information? I think you always got to think in that aspect. I think that's a really big one, that just a mindset, like a foundational mindset that you have to get as a jungler is, there's pros and cons of every decision, but there's also pros and cons of every decision the opponent is making as well. So how can you capitalize on his cons?
Yeah, I would agree with that. The easiest way to do that, by the way, if for anyone that is listening, that's just starting out in the jungle, like if you're confused as to, okay, I saw the enemy jungler show up topside, and what do I do now? Like, do I go take the dragon bot? Do I go invade their jungle? This is that part where information comes in key, where if you're checking, say the enemy jungler shows up top and you see that they have their bot side buff. That automatically tells you most likely their bot side camps are not going to be there because they recently cleared their buff, which means most likely they recently cleared those camps that are nearby. Now, that typically tells you it's a safer play to go for the objective that's on the bottom half of the map. However, let's say you saw them come top 2 minutes ago, you went down bot. If you don't find any of their camps, don't feel like it's a bad invade. Just because you're not necessarily taking something away from them doesn't mean you're not gaining something. You can always just even a ward, one ward in the enemy jungle
Yes.
can be more useful than taking their entire side of the camp, their entire camps on that side of the map. The reason being is you'll see them on respawn, you'll see them when their camps respawn, you'll see them when they back, you'll see what side are they going to be trying to gank. Just that one ward can give you the information needed to stop 2 deaths, 3 deaths, 4 deaths, so on and so forth.
Yes. I love you that you said that because yeah. So let's say you're not tracking as well as you like. Let's say this is a new concept to you, tracking his CS and what he's doing. But you're wanting to try and you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I can try this. If you bought a control ward or you have Trinket with you, and you come in here, I don't know if you guys see my mouse over here on the bot side. Talking about the top side scenario. Come in onto his blue, his grump, and his wolf. It's all down. And you're like, what a wasted trip. If you drop a trinket right here in the middle between wolves, sentinel, grump, or you drop a control ward maybe on the opposite side of grump, or maybe on the top side of the entry point into the wolves, where it's maybe will last longer. That could be the difference of your bot lane dying. You know, getting ganked and all two of them dying, and then they get a dragon. Vision and information is so key. So yeah, Adam, I like what you said there. Just because you didn't get anything from the jungler doesn't mean you didn't get anything. That makes sense. And Adam, I'll let you talk on this since you added this slide.
All right. So a lot of jungling. Let me rephrase this. The game doesn't start once you've gotten out of the loading screen. The game starts the moment champ select is going on. And the reason I say that is because, and this is myself included, when I was silver gold, I never thought actively, what am I trying to accomplish this game? Because with different champions, you're going to have different objectives. If I'm playing Shyvana or Hecarim, not necessarily Hecarim, but let's say Shyvana. Let's take Shyvana. If I'm playing Shyvana, I want to farm until level 6. Because pre 6, I'm kind of useless. My ganks aren't super strong. I have no CC. I don't really have damage. So I am a farm first jungler. Let's say I'm someone who's a lot slower in clear speed. Let's say maybe Rammus, Volibear, something like that. Someone who has a lot of utility early. Then I'm a ganking first jungler. I'm looking to specifically farm what I can, but every opportunity I get, I want to be looking into ganking. I want to be getting my lanes ahead. And lastly, and this is very niche, but objectives first. There are certain champions, again, I'll go back to the Shyvana. I probably should have used a different jungler for the farming, but I can't think of one off the top of my head.
Karthus,
Shyvana.
Fiddlesticks. Fiddlesticks
There
is
you go.
another one.
Fiddlesticks.
He can impact before 6, but you want to get to that level 6 as fast as possible. And I know
There
where
you
you're
go.
going with the Shyvana, so yeah, objective first.
Yeah, exactly. So let's say Fiddle is farm first, Volley is your gank first, and objective first would be someone who highly prioritizes objectives on the map. This also can be applied to how you like to play the game. Specifically, but going into champions only, Shyvana, the reason you want to be objectives first is just because dragons are super important to her passive, stuff like that. Where like the old Mordekaiser, I don't think he was ever a jungler, but let's say old Mordekaiser's ultimate, where you can take an objective and have it as your pet, follow you around the map. Like those are kind of junglers that you would see that want to focus objectives first. So thinking before the game starts, even before you're in the loading screen, what do I want to accomplish going into this?
And then
On
one
top
thing
of that,
I would caveat on this is, especially if you're starting out, got to think about what am I actually good at. Like, am I good at farming junglers? Am I better at ganking junglers? So like, just that's kind of another way to think about it too. Not only what does my champ that I've selected do, but is this something I'm even skillful at right now? You could do something, just work on it. But I've realized at certain peaks in my playing, I've been better at certain things, and it just wasn't worth it to go outside of what I was better at.
Yeah, I like that point. A lot of people are going to have their style of play. There are going to be it's possible that you're good at being a little bit passive until you get your ultimate, kind of staying even in farm and scaling up. But it's also completely possible that you're not that great with pathing or you're not that great with objective control, but you love the idea of going to lanes and just fighting 2v1s. Or you're just good at those fights, you're good at those skirmishes. So not necessarily looking at what's good right now, but what you are good at as well. Now, let's say you get a little bit higher in the elo chain and you're feeling yourself, you can play any of those styles, then you want to look at what is in for the meta. And when I say meta, I mean just what is good specifically right now. So, if you had looked about a month ago, I'd say about a month and a half ago, it was a pretty clear farming meta. People wanted to farm up. The camps came up pretty fast, and whoever had the farm lead, whoever was repeatedly taking their camps was always ahead in the jungle. But now they're switching that meta. They're switching to a ganking first meta. So I see a lot of people who are swapping champions like myself. I went from playing Shyvana, who was a farm first jungler. I can no longer do that. In a meta like right now, I'm probably going to lose a game simply because my champion is not meant for that specific, like, for what is good right now. So think about what is there's multiple things to go about. What's good right now? What are you good at? And then you combine the two, and if you find an overlap, that's probably your sweet area.
Yeah.
Another and the last point that's really on there is who has favorable matchups to help me accomplish my goal. So let's say you have a top lane that has a winning early matchup but a losing late matchup. Mid lane, you have a super scaling mid lane and you have a super scaling AD carry. You are typically not going to want to gank your super scaling mid laner or super scaling AD carry if they just want to farm. Or even like you can say a super scaling top laner like Nasus, a lot of the time people won't gank that simply because they know my teammate is looking to just scale up and farm. My teammate does not want to fight, does not want to risk dying, does not want to risk setting themselves behind.
He's pinging me away right now.
Yeah, that happens. That actually happens. Where like you'll see people in gold, you'll see people in every elo, I'm pretty sure. Or if you have a Nasus top, there will be times where he's just like, no, leave me the fuck alone. I just want to farm.
Yeah.
I just want to farm. Just leave me alone. And so you have to look at who has the best matchup to help you with that. Another thing matchup wise is let's say you're in the bot lane and the enemy bot lane is, I don't know, Pyke Yumi. Or no, sorry, Ezreal Pyke or Ezreal Yumi. Those are bot lanes that are typically going to have a lot of escape. And now let's say your support doesn't have a lot of engage, or your AD carry doesn't have a lot of engage, or you don't have a lot of engage as a jungler. You are typically not going to want to keep looking bot because they are such a slippery lane compared to your team who doesn't have a lot of setup. But if you have someone like, let's say, a Volibear in the top lane, he has a slow, he has his stun, he has multiple forms of CC to set you up for a gank. You are most likely going to look at that matchup and be like, hey, I want to go there because it has the highest success rate.
And
All of these things.
and that's all like things that you'll learn as you play more and jungle more. But back to your point about loading screen and champ select, you should already, so you got about 10 minutes unless someone, everyone has really good internet, where you can think about, okay, this lane, my bot lane looks ungankable. It's like you said, Ezreal's down there with Yumi. This is Nami and I don't know. Someone, it's bot is like pointless for me. And so you look at that, but you also got to look at, like, I think you're kind of mentioning it. It's like, what do I provide? So if you're a straight DPS jungler with hardly any CC, showing up at laners that don't have CC, it's kind of pointless unless you just really path and the person's not paying attention at all. You gotta think like what I bring to the table along with my laners. Does it mesh? Is it worth it? That makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then just remember everything that you're thinking about in terms of favorable matchups for you. You also want to be looking at for the enemy jungler. You want to be thinking the same thing in reverse. Okay, so I want to farm first. Does the enemy jungle want to farm first? Or does the enemy jungle want to gank first? Because knowing what the enemy jungler wants to do, again, information is super important. Knowing where the enemy jungler is going to go or predicting what they want to do is going to give you the ideas that are necessary to prevent those things or turn those situations in your favor.
And it's okay to be wrong with those guesses too, because then you're like, oh wait, okay, maybe he doesn't want to do that. Like, it's good to have hypothesis that get shattered because it actually teaches you more than I think being right all the time.
Yeah, like let's say you think the enemy jungle is going to be super ganking early, and you go to counter gank at level 3, and they don't show up somewhere until let's say, and you say they let's say they don't show up, and you're just like, okay, what the heck, I was totally wrong, and they show up post level 6 ganking somewhere. That tells you, okay, so this person wasn't necessarily looking to farm a lot, which means, or this person wasn't looking to gank a lot, which means that they were farming, they were power farming, which kind of gives you an idea later on in the game. What are they going to want to do, and what can you see from their habits? What can you deduce from what they're thinking or what they're doing as to what they're going to do in the future?
Yep.
Because if you see someone who's just, you think they're going to be farming and they're just super ganking all over the place, that tells you, okay, their camps are up. I can go take them. It's okay to be wrong there because then you have other things to do on the map. Or they're super farming and they're not ganking. That tells you later on, most likely, if they're taking all of their camps on spawn the moment they spawn, you can almost bet that they are most likely going to be on objectives just as quickly, which gives you an idea. Okay, around this time, I know the enemy jungler wants to be in this quadrant of the map or in this area, which then allows you to choose, hey, do I want to go confront them in that area, or do I want to go make a play on the other side of the map, which is safer for me because I'm weaker right now?
Yeah. And the thing too, like, is if someone's so like dependable on that, like you can calculate, okay, they're gonna be here, they're doing this, they're doing this, they're doing this. As long as you're even, it's like, we really need to fight our objective, or do I just sit in the bush and wait for them to cross into the objective? Because I know he's gonna come to this dragon in 10 seconds. So that information is so key. And another thing I want to say, just what you were saying right there, is most of us don't have time to play every single jungle champ to the point where we know, okay, Xin Zhao likes to do red buff, possible gank into 3 camp clear. He likes to go scuttles. Like, we're not going to be able to play every champion to know kind of what that champion does. But if you play against an Echo, 2 or 3 times in a week, and you're like, okay, I thought he would gank more, or he clears all blue side first. People tend to do what other people do. They follow like top streamers, pro players, different things, or they read how to clear with Echo. And so even if you don't have time to play Echo, or you're not reading that, pay attention to what Echo's players do. You can start to learn typically what an Echo player will do.
Yeah, I think that segues perfectly into the next slide, which is helpful resources.
So this one, I'll make this slideshow where you guys can click on it. And these are just really good websites that I've found that are pretty helpful. And these are the content creators that I think are very helpful. For Caillou, very good jungle focus um, content creator. He's so like, if you've heard of King Sticks, he's a decent, but he's kind of like clickbaity. Verkayu, I would say, is more on actual educational value, less clickbaity. Valeris he does a lot of videos on how to clear. So if you want to learn how to do a full camp clear with Volibear, he'll have a video on that. Or he'll even have videos where he'll say, okay, you don't full clear with this champion. You do a red chicken so you don't get it taken away from you, and then you do Grump, and Blue. So he does helpful things like that. And Nice, he does a lot of different videos. He does jungle videos. I've seen him top videos, but he's kind of like if you like someone that's a little bit more abrasive and tells you you're an idiot to help you stop doing stupid things. He's kind of like. But one thing I wanted to show on u.gg, talking about this a little bit, is selecting, not really fighting the meta, finding what you're good at and finding what's meta and finding it overlapping. I think that was a really good way for you to say it. I wish I had paint where I could draw a circle on the overlap. But so I think everyone should, when you're looking at what I should play or what's meta, and so a lot of people don't like playing meta because it's like, oh, you're a meta slave. Well, okay, are you playing for fun or are you playing to gain rank? If you're playing for fun, just play the champ you like. Who cares if see, if you love Gragas jungle, you love it. It just like you get up in the morning talking about how you want to play Gragas jungle, play Gragas jungle. Like if that's play Norm with Gragas jungle. But if you're like trying to improve, what I would do is find the region you're in because some regions play different styles. The meta is not necessarily defined across the world. So find your region and find. I would say find unless you're like I would stick in your rank. So right now I'm silver. So I look here, and this is the way I think about it. And Adam, I don't know how you planned out how you select. I don't know if you just do based on style, but what I like to look at is I want to see a high win rate because that means that a lot of people are winning with it. Like I don't have the time to make Rengar work. That's not what I'm trying to do. That's not what I'm trying to accomplish. But an also thing is you got to look. I look at pick rates as well. So I'm going to quickly go over this and hopefully make it make sense. So if 0.5% of people are playing Sion and winning almost 53% of the time, does that mean Sion's busted? Or does that mean that the people that play Sion are one-trick Sions, like in a generic kind of thought? Does that mean Sion's that strong, or does that mean that that minuscule amount of people are actually really good at Sion? So what I think is more important to see if you're like trying to create a 6-7 champ pool of like of these champs I can play and I like, look at ones that are high play rates, which I would say once you get over about 3%, what I've seen, that's a typically high decent play rate. What champs over 3% are winning most of their games? Not more cards. So we're in silver in North America. Xin Zhao, Morgana, Dr. Muno, Chico, Zach, Trundle's getting up there. Volibear, Warwick, Master Yi, Nocturne. That's as far as we'll go for this. And look at that, 0.9%. But another thing I look at is, okay, so they get played a lot, a decent amount, high win rate. Multiple people successful. But if they're getting banned out 58.4% of games, how am I going to improve on this champion if I can barely play them? So I also look at ban rates. And if anything's really over 10%, it's kind of just too nutty. A lot of people I've heard they'll like a combination score, 8 to 4, that's 12%, so that's under 15%, so that's a good champ because he doesn't get picked too much and he doesn't get banned too much. That's a little bit next level thinking. But Mordekaiser, Morgana, Shaco, they're going to get banned. Shaco's getting banned a third of the games. Why? In my opinion, why play him? So that's what I look at. I look at pick rate, a decent size, win rate to show that it's somewhat meta, and a ban rate that's low that shows I can play it. It's approachable. And then I just try to steer away from. So a lot of people jump to Diana Morgana. They got buffed because, I mean, they just huge buffed them. It's crazy. Let's play them. But most likely, Riot's going to take care of that. And so you might switch to a champion, and they're going to get just. Where's Diana at? Down here. But she still had a 19% ban rate. What are your thoughts on that, Adam? Like, do you have any thoughts that come up when I was talking about that?
Yeah, just a couple things. I mean, I obviously I agree with some points, I disagree with some points, but that's just how you like to think of the game, right? There are going to be some people who they're going to say, you know what, I don't care what the pick rate is, I don't care what the ban rate is, I want to play this champion. If that's your style and that's what you want to do, go for it. There's no harm in that. Just realize that that is going to be a little bit more difficult than, let's say, playing something that's a little bit more in the meta right now. Let's say, for example, Rengar, as you said, right? If I'm someone who has never played an assassin or never played in the jungle and I'm starting out and I'm choosing someone that's super far down in the meta right now, super not that great, sure, I'm not saying I can't have success on this champion. What we mean is it's just going to be a lot harder for you and there is going to be a steeper learning curve. Now, if that's what you really want to do, go for it. Because that's not saying you can't have success on those champions. Because I can guarantee you almost every single one of these junglers, there is someone in Challenger who plays this champion in the jungle.
Yep.
Now, it just comes down to how much time and effort you're willing to put into it. Another note that also goes on time and effort is, as Zeke mentioned, some people they want to look at 6, 7 champions. That's a lot. And that's coming from someone who puts a decent amount of time into the game. And most people that you talk to are going to tell you your fastest way to climb, your fastest way to grow and learn is going to be by playing 2 to 3 champions because that's a
That's
reasonable
regardless of
sample
any
size.
role, regardless,
Hmm.
not
Yeah,
just
exactly.
junglers.
Mhm. Because it gives you a good sample size. It gives you an idea of you can have different play styles if you want, and different junglers accomplish different things. The more you spread yourself out, the less likely it is that you're going to excel at any one, which means you're just making it harder for yourself to go farther. Now, if you're okay with investing the time to get better with each and every one, power to you. But this is just our tips on the fastest and easiest ways to improve and grow.
Yeah.
Um, I wouldn't personally look too far into uh, pick rates because what I notice a lot is that, especially in low elo, when I used to play in silver and stuff, people don't pick champions that they find are hard. And what I mean by that is there can be a super good champion like Samira as AD carry right now, but she isn't picked as much as she used to be because Riot made her harder to play. But if you feel like you have fun on the champion and you feel like you can master this super hard champion, go for it. But that shouldn't stop you just because others aren't able to pick it up, in my personal opinion.
I think that just goes into what you were saying earlier, though. You got to be understanding that you're making the game a little bit harder for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some champions like Skarner. He's just not popular. He's not necessarily hard. That's why his pick rate's so low. Is he's just not popular.
Yep.
But he's had a decent win rate for like ever. So that's a champion like Riot's not going to do anything to hurt this champion. So if you wanted a champion that's super like 0.2% ban rate, 0.9% pick rate, you can play Skarner every game. And if that's a just different things to think about. And the last thing I'll caveat on that is um, the way I think about it too is if I'm going to put hundreds of games on a champion, I don't want it. If I have goals of being gold and then one day a plat, I mean the meta's going to change and shift. Yes, just something to think about. I don't want a champion that like falls off super because there's some champions you'll see from silver to gold they fall like 8-9% win rate. So I just take a gander at it sometimes when I'm looking. It's like, hey, that champion's still up there that I was thinking about playing. Where's this one guy? Oh, he's way down here. Just something to think about. All right. You got anything else you want to say, Adam? Or anyone have any questions?
Um, no, I think we covered a lot of information today, and for anyone who does decide to like read or sorry, not read, but listen to this later, um, if you do have questions or you feel a little bit overwhelmed or like there's a lot of information, stuff like that, jungle, like any other rule, isn't meant to be learned all at once.
Yeah.
You're not going to learn everything all at once. It's the same as any other role. Anything you do, you're not going to be perfect the first time you try it, and you're not going to learn it all the first couple times you play it. You're going to need time, you're going to need to experiment, and it's just going to take you a while to get the hang of it, just like any other thing. Maybe it'll come a little bit more naturally to you than others. That's a little bit different. But don't feel discouraged if you feel like, hey, I hear all this crazy stuff going on that I don't completely understand. Focus on one thing at a time. And so if you do take anything out of this, kind of like my little TLDR at the end, just focus on what do I want to accomplish? What do I want to do? And how can I make that happen? Be it your pathing, be it your jungle, your champion choice, be it your lanes, whatever it is. I think those are some super simple and super easy points that you can focus on to start with. Because forget meta, forget all that stuff. When you first play the game or when you first play the role, you want to be comfortable. That's the first thing. So play what you want to play, but make sure that you're actively thinking, what do I want to do? How can I do it? And where can I do it best? That's my little TLDR.
Yeah, I think you just think about the game actively. Like if you take it seriously, if you're just playing for fun, I guess it's a different kind. You're gonna get better just by playing in like the time. But if you like, like me, you're kind of competitive. Like you have like little competitive juices flowing in. You kind of take it kind of seriously. I mean, I have fun, but take it seriously. You got to think actively playing. You're not gonna accidentally get better. You have to actively get better. Like, what did I do wrong this game? How can I get better the next game? I'm slow to objectives. How can I speed up objectives? How do I get more vision? So different things like that. And I wrote down the question I want to ask you, Adam, before we end this. Biggest thing that you learned in the jungle that you saw improve? Like, it's like, did you ever have like a light bulb thing or a moment where you got really better at something and you actually saw significant improvement?
Um, hmm. There, so with different times and different meta changes, different experience in the jungle, stuff like that. Uh, different tips will get you different places. Now, I would say the biggest change for me was last season, and I'm saying this because I want you guys to kind of see how small nuances make such a big difference. Last season, I was playing in gold quite often. I got to plat a little bit, like the barely to the edge of plat, and I started playing against some super high level players. And I noticed that in most of my games, I was always down a couple of levels in the jungle. I was always down 2 to 3 levels by the end of the game. And I was always wondering why. And it was as simple as I wasn't taking my grump or I wasn't taking my Krugs enough. My pathing was red to Raptors to the top side, and by the time I was done with my top side, I didn't want to go all the way back to my bot side for my Krugs. And I left them then, and it would happen multiple times throughout the game. And someone pointed it out to me one day, and I was like, wow. So me skipping out on that one camp, and this I'm gonna tie this all into pathing, you'll see. But me skipping out on this one camp ended up losing me 2 to 3 levels throughout the entirety of the game. And I noticed immediately once I started including Krugs in my pathing, once I started including all of my camps, using all of my resources, I was immediately, instead of being down 2 to 3 levels, I ended the games usually above 1 or 2 levels. And something as small as one camp can make all the difference in the jungle. So, to tie that all in, what I mean to say by that is just effective pathing. That's the biggest thing that's ever made a change to me in the jungle. And the biggest thing that's not just like a mechanical skill is just knowing your pathing, studying up on where you should go next and following up on it.
If you
Because
watch Verkaya videos, he'll call it sequencing. You're
hmm
sequencing your tempo. Yep.
hmm yeah, that's the biggest thing for me. And the reason being is because it's just I actually was watching a Nice video earlier today, and he put it really beautifully. He said, in lane, you have to last hit. If you don't last hit, you don't get gold, but you'll still get the experience. So you can not last hit whatsoever, and you'll still be at a decent XP level. In the jungle, that's a double-edged sword. It's good and bad. You can never miss a last hit on a jungle camp. At least, well, almost never. But you can miss out on a lot of XP. And that all comes from pathing.
I totally agree. I would say my biggest lesson that's helped me improve is foregoing passivity. I don't. Hopefully, I said that word right. Is being more aggressive, almost being disrespectful. And I think you got to do that to learn where your limits are. But you also got to learn that maybe I can accomplish more than I think I can accomplish. Like if I go top with Xin Zhao, like we win this maybe, but the only way to find out is do it. Like I feel like earlier on I played way too passive. I played if it wasn't like a 99% success rate, I kind of exaggerating. I wasn't going. So I think if you learn sequencing, if you're a beginning jungler, you learn sequencing, controlling your tempo, but you're also willing to test the limits. That will help you to get more comfortable with your champion. But also, especially in the lower elos, like in the elos that we're in and we're talking about, is you can play a little bit disrespectful and get away with it. And you also learn a lot from it. So I think that's the biggest thing that has helped me is not playing so passive and taking chances and opportunities.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. You miss 100% of the opportunities you don't take.
Some life lessons here.
So take your shots, take as much as you can, and be willing to mess up. Be willing to take those aggressive plays and get rid of that passivity, even if you're going to make mistakes, because you're gonna learn from them. Because one game you're gonna make a gank that you really shouldn't, and you're gonna die for it. And forget one game. One time you're gonna do it. The next time you come for that gank, keep it in mind, actively think about it, and don't make the same mistake again. I guarantee you'll see a change in the result.
Cool. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. We're gonna be trying to do this monthly for our junglers here on Discord with League of Legends Midwest, and hopefully we'll get this posted on Facebook, or we'll figure out what to do with this and do with it. And hopefully you guys enjoy, and we'll get with us next time. Catch you guys later. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Zeke. Catch you later.